Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. As Ambazonia's struggle for liberation enters yet another defining phase, the spirit of resistance remains unbroken across the southern Cameroons. Now, despite years of conflict, displacement, and attempts by La République to rewire and rewrite the narrative, the people of Ambazonia continue to march steadily towards the recognition of their sovereignty. Now, from the corridors of diplomacy to the front lines of advocacy, Ambazonians at home and abroad remain unwavering in their pursuit of self-determination, a cause rooted in decades of historical injustice and political betrayal. While the war has exacted a heavy human toll, it has also birthed a renewed sense of identity and purpose among a people determined to reclaim their destiny. In contrast, the administration in Yaoundé appears increasingly preoccupied with internal power struggles and public relations maneuvers aimed at preserving the illusion of stability. As elections draw closer, the colonial elections, new schemes and narratives are being crafted to maintain control and pacify a restless populace. Efforts that many view as mere political theater designed to mask deeper systemic decay. Yet amid these competing realities, Ambazonia's voice continues to grow louder, echoed through acts of defiance, global solidarity, and the powerful words of those who refuse to let the struggle fade into silence. With that, we'll head on to the prime headlines for tonight. And these are the prime headlines on Undaunted. Tonight, we see Ambazonia State Army launches a deadly attack on La République forces in Ekok, located in Manu County on October 6, 2025. We see Solidarity in Inc. as Adiang Assuoe dedicated award-winning book to Ambazonia. Dion and Ngute's remark expose deep-seated hypocrisy in Yaoundé's political establishment. And the voice of Ambazonia today brings us Paul Tassong's Outburst and the implosion of Yaoundé's intelligence network. And on the African scene, we see sudden floods devastating homes and farmlands across Sudan. And across the globe, we see Carney meeting with Trump in Washington as trade and tariff tensions take center stage. We also see Pope Leo to visit Turkey and Lebanon on first international mission focused on peace and interfaith unity. The Amazonian State Army launched simultaneous attacks on La République du Cameroun's forces in Ekok, Manu County, in the early hours of 6 October 2025, on Monday. Now, according to local sources, the operation targeted up to 4 colonial checkpoints and the joint Ekok border post. The assaults reportedly resulted in the death of a Cameroonian police officer identified as GPX2 Medinig Valentin. Yeah, so take a quick look at this report and the visuals. We see witnesses say the Ambazonian fighters employed coordinated tactics to overwhelm Lari public security units stationed at the post. The engagements, which lasted several hours, underscored the continuing volatility along the border corridor between Ambazonia and Nigeria. The latest incident brings the unofficial death toll of La Republic Defense and the security forces to 1,775 since the conflict began in 2016, according to figures compiled from various independent sources. Now, the war, which erupted following disputes over governance, autonomy, and Ambazonia's identity, has led to widespread violence, mass displacement, and severe humanitarian consequences across the Cameroons. We see the Ambazonian State Army maintaining that it is fighting to reclaim the rightful sovereignty of the former British Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, meanwhile, La Republic forces continue operations aimed at restoring what Yaoundé terms national unity and territorial integrity under the colonial government's directives. Now, as the conflict approaches its ninth year, both sides remain entrenched with little progress towards a negotiated settlement. The international community continues to express concern over the worsening humanitarian conditions and the toll on civilian population. Well, we have with us in the studios Barrister Mbeseha. This is not exactly an isolated news in the course of the war that Ambazonia has had to endure, a war that they did not choose, one declared on them by the colonial regime. We've seen that both sides are losing people on a daily basis. And in as much as we know that the colonial regime said it's Ambazonian State Army and the entire security forces of Ambazonia were no match, and in only 2 weeks, this all will come to an end. It has dragged on for going close to 9 years now. I'm sure that has left them to understand that they had underestimated the will and the determination of a people's fighting for something that is rightfully theirs. With regards to the continuous loss of lives, we'd like to get your thoughts on the ongoing war in Ambazonia.
Well, if it's talking about loss of life, it has become a ritual. People are dying every day, mostly Ambazonians, killed by the people for no good reason. But back to what it is. From your report, if Yaoundé reports officially that they've lost 1,175 of their soldiers, that's a huge loss. You can multiply those figures by 10 because they will never report the real figures. They will report something much less to encourage the people to continue to fight. But the issue that they should be asking themselves, not us yet, what are they dying for? What are they dying for? Even if it's just 1,175, what are they dying for? Dying to go and occupy a territory that is not theirs. Dying to steal from people that own something that does not belong to them. But even if it is theft they wanted to encourage, what are they dying for? How much of this money stolen from Ambazonia goes to develop that country? It doesn't go to develop the country. The bulk of the money that they steal from Ambazonia through this war is also stolen from them into foreign banks, into private accounts. Then back to Ambazonia. Yes, we are dying for a cause that we've all declared that it is worth fighting for. We're reporting about Ekok. If those figures, if that information is correct, it is a stark reminder to everybody, including our sympathizers and our opponents, that this war is not what they thought about. It is a reminder to Yaoundé that no place in Ambazonia is safe for them. It is important for them right now because if it happened this night, this is election time, and we've said that no elections in Ambazonia. That's a strong reminder to them that Ambazonia is a no-go place politically for the Republic of Cameroon. You come there at your own risk, stay away from it, We wish it could do more. If they are only dead, 10 dead, we wish it could be 30 because they are legitimate target. What are they doing in Ekok? There are people in Cameroon never shares no boundary with Nigeria from Ekok. No boundary at all. So what are the forces doing there and dying? The answer is they are fighting an unwinnable war. Kudos to the ASAs who hit that strike. Congratulations to them. And God willing, those of them who survived, if anyone was injured, will get well sooner than later. Again, it's a stark reminder this is October 2025. 8 years, 9 years into the war that was declared on us, with a promise that was going to end in 2 weeks. 2 weeks of transition into 9 years, and the war has not ended. It will only end when we get what we want to get. It will only end when the aggressor, like people in Cameroon, realizes that they are fighting an unwinnable war. When they come to the conference table for negotiations, so shall the war end, and so shall the separation be, and we shall live as good neighbors or bad neighbors, but we shall live as neighbors. We as a country, they as a country, they don't choose their neighbors. We don't choose ours. But you're either a good neighbor or you're a bad neighbor. But looking at what has happened to us, it will require a lot for us to be good neighbors. But we accommodate them because we cannot choose our neighbors. We have to be with them. But we have to be wise. We have to be careful. We have to see twice, think twice before we accept anything that concerns them, even as neighbors. Over to you.
War is dragging on, and Ambazonians know that they're fighting for a rightful cause, a right to self-determination and reclaiming their sovereignty. There are some who are recognizing Ambazonians and some who are actually giving them some level of merit. We see renowned author Adiang Assuoe, also known as Tommy Germain, made waves by dedicating his award-winning book to Ambazonia. Before we go further into this report, let's find out who Adiang Assuoe really is. We see Adiang Assuoe, who's also known as Tommy Germain, a Southern Cameroonian author, actor, and filmmaker from Limbe in Fako County, who won the Author of the Year award at the 2025 International Impact Book Awards. The award recognized his critically acclaimed memoir, Digging for Life, 4 Years a Slave. Now, key details about Adiang Assuoe literal work. His literary work, his memoir, Digging for Life, 4 Years a Slave, recounts his harrowing real-life experience. In pursuit of a better life in post-apartheid South Africa, he traveled from the Cameroons to Angola and endured 4 years of enslavement in diamond mines during the country's civil war. He was eventually rescued by a military general and secured passage to Brazil. Well, we see that he has also won awards. Assuoe received the Author of the Year award at the 2025 International Impact Book Award held in Hollywood, USA in 2024. He was named a finalist for the Hollywood Book of the Year award. Other achievements, he is also recognized as a trailblazing storyteller, filmmaker, and broadcast journalist. The Best Author of the Year winner expressed his solidarity with the Ambazonian people in a heartfelt gesture that has garnered significant attention. Reacting after receiving the award, Thomas Germain Adiang Assuoe says the money made from the sale of his book, Digging for Life, 4 Years a Slave. 4 Years a Slave will be used to support the children affected by the ongoing Ambazonian war. To better get the funds, he declared a 50% discount to the price per copy of the book. Assuoe emerged finalist at the International Impact Book Award 2025. And we see that his dedication to Ambazonia highlights his commitment to shedding light on the region's struggles. Ambazonia has been embroiled in a long-standing conflict with La République du Cameroon's government seeking independence and self-determination. The Ambazonian War began in 2026. It broke out in 2016 with protests and strikes turning violent after the colonial government cracked down on demonstrators. The conflict has resulted in thousands of deaths and displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Despite efforts to negotiate, the situation remains dire, with both sides dogging. Assuoe's book dedication comes as the Amazonian struggle gains traction globally. More people are becoming aware of the nation's plight, drawing comparisons to other long-standing conflicts like Palestine. The international community's growing interest in Ambazonia may help amplify the voices of those seeking peace and justice in the nation. By dedicating his book to the Southern Cameroons, Adiang Assuoe sends a powerful message of solidarity to the peoples of Ambazonia. His gesture serves as a reminder that the world is watching and that the struggles of the Ambazonian people will not be forgotten. Well, while that is happening, we also see Ambazonians abroad still recognizing their roots. We also see a recent remark by La République du Cameroon's Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph Dion Ngute, which has stirred public debate and renewed scrutiny over the government's credibility and internal contradictions. While addressing supporters in Bertois, the Prime Minister accused several former government ministers, now opposing President Paul Biya, of having done nothing during their time in office. Dion Ngute's statement, intended as a political rebuke, has instead sparked backlash for inadvertently highlighting systemic dysfunction and hypocrisy within the ruling elite. Observers note that the ministers in question all served under the Prime Minister's leadership. At no point during their tenure did Dion Ngute publicly question their performance, raise alarms over their competence, or initiate accountability measures. His sudden denunciation of their inefficiency, critics argue, reflects not only selective memory, but also an admission of collective failure at the highest levels of La République's government. Now, if these ministers did nothing while serving under him, then it suggests that the Prime Minister himself was complicit in maintaining a culture of inaction. The controversy underscores a long-standing pattern in Yaoundé's political structure, where loyalty often outweighs merit, and accountability is only invoked when former allies fall out of favor. For decades, the Biya administration has faced accusations of fostering a system in which corruption and incompetence are very tolerated, so long as officials remain politically loyal. Dion Ngute's remark also highlight the growing fractures within the ruling party as the country heads towards uncertain political terrain. With mounting pressure over succession debate and public disillusionment with governance, such statements only expose the erosion of unity among top officials once bound by silence. Political observers say the Prime Minister's comments could backfire as they reveal the contradictions of an administration that routinely shields underperforming officials until political convenience dictates otherwise. The episode has reignited broader discussions about governance, accountability in La République du Cameroon, and whether the ruling elites, including Dion Ngute himself, can meaningfully address the very failures they now publicly condemn. So, Barrister Mbeseha, before we get back into the wonderful recognition of that global star there from Fako County, Limbe precisely, we'll take a look at these last reports we just saw. Dion Ngute condemning the same government he was part of, looking at him throwing the rest of the leadership he worked with under the bus. Do you think the Prime Minister's criticism of former ministers and even Paul Biya could be interpreted as a sign of internal division or weakening loyalty within the ruling establishment? And if so, how do such remarks from the Prime Minister reflect on the credibility of Yaoundé's governance system, especially from the Ambazonian perspective that questions its legitimacy in southern Cameroons?
What Dion Ngute said is none of what you have suggested. But let us take off from what he is. The elections, and I was talking now because there are elections going on. In Cameroon, the elections are a 7-year cycle. What is going on now in Cameroon, that also includes part of Ambazonia, is an evaluation of the last 7 years. The last 7 years of Dion Ngute's administration. What do they reflect? They are a total failure. Dion Ngute is the head of government. And so if his government ministers under him are not working, if they have not delivered, who is to be blamed for that for 7 years? It is he. Because if he had any means to evaluate them and they don't deliver, he should have fired them. What is the success of Dion Ngute for the past 7 years when he was made prime minister? From east to west, from north to south, nothing. It is not you and me saying it. Their records are there being criticized and put out on the internet and the public for everybody to see. Dion Ngute, if he has no records ever to be reckoned with, they are records of total failure. They are records of incompetence. Why? Why, one must ask. How and why did this intellectual, a man with a PhD degree in law, a man with so-called experience in foreign affairs, because he was attached to the foreign ministry, how and why did he fail so woefully? Can he have any defense at all? As a prime minister, zero. As an individual, even back to his own community called the Ambazonia or Southern Cameroon, zero to show for his presence in government. And if we can only refer, you have said that he's one of us, if we can only refer to his records as an Ambazonian and evaluate him on a few items, that would justify why we conclude that he's not worth even mentioning in history. You will mention in history as a disaster, a sign of total failure, a sign of complete incompetence, politically, intellectually, and otherwise. And these are the examples. Before he became prime minister, he was working somewhere in the government. As far as Ambazonia is concerned, I've said this before, this is Dion Ngute, who went to the African Commission in Banjul. And this issue that is now war came up. Adiang was the one to say this Ambazonia, they call it SCNC at the time, that they are terrorists. That was Dion Ngute, one of them. SCNC stood for Southern Cameroon National Council. He was a Southern Cameroonian. And he described these people before a court, a rare court, that they were terrorists. The Ambazonian people did not even reply. SCNC didn't give an answer. It is a court who asked him, where do rebels, where do terrorists go to court? They are now before the court, and you call them terrorists. You are just wrong. Back again to Ambazonia and for the records of Mr. Dion Ngute. His first mission, when he became prime minister, and we're told, I don't know how far it is, he was put there to solve the Anglophone problem. He came in 2018. His father, political maker, Mr. Paul Biya, convened the Grand National Dialogue and gave it to him to chair and run. What was the purpose of the Grand National Dialogue? It was to find solutions to the so-called Anglophone problem. He convened it. He chaired it. What has it produced? For 7 years, he has produced nothing. The Grand National Dialogue, all of us agree, even with him, that it was a total failure. Why and how? In that thing, they purportedly put up something disarmament. Has he succeeded? Can he say that it has succeeded? It has not. If it has succeeded, we will not be hearing of the bombing in Ekok right now. If it has succeeded, the boys and boys in the bushes would have disarmed. The war would have ended. They put under that the program reconstruction. Has reconstruction succeeded? Just in the northwest and southwest? No, nothing. All the roads are the same. They have gone from bad to worse. They have gone from passable to become totally impassable. Under who? Under the prime ministership of Mr. Dion Ngute. And so, what is he talking about? This is Dion Ngute, who has visited Bamenda so many times. The last time was just 2 months ago, to inaugurate a road that was failing right before his own eyes. Who stood there and announced the way that they were trying to construct an urban crossing? Who is the urban crossing today? Nothing is to be found. That John Ngute, before that, a week or 2 months before that, he came to Bamenda, went to Kumba and promised a gas bottling station. Where is the gas bottling station that Mr. Dion Ngute promised? Zero to show for it. And so this is a catalog of failures. And so this guy is a failure as an individual. He's a disaster as a head of government. And so he has no records to show. He has absolutely nothing to show for his being there other than failure. And so I think historians, because history has its own place, historians are documenting his activities. They are documenting the work that his government did. They are documenting their own failures. There comes a time when honest people agree that they went wrong, that they were mistaken. When proud people resign, when they agree that they have failed. This is what we expect of Dion Ngute, not the idea of going through the gymnastics and lying shamelessly to himself. He blames his own ministers that they are supposed to have been appointed by him, because by their text, he nominates his own ministers. His own ministers are responsible before him. If they have not delivered, he should have resigned collectively with his government. And now he agrees they have not delivered. He's blaming them for the failure of it. Government action is jointly liable. If as a government you promise to build schools, you don't build the schools, you promise to dig roads, you don't dig the roads, your government resigned. The government resigned by the leader himself stepping down with his whole team called government. If he doesn't know this, with his PhD in law, if he doesn't know this, with decades in administration, then he must be saving himself. This is Dion Ngute, who told us publicly not 2 months, 3 months ago, that Sonora cannot be closed, that there will not be anything in Kribi. This is audio, video taped. And the next 2 days, he was in Kribi. They were in Kribi putting up a better refinery, an improved refinery. What else can cause Dion Ngute ever to resign? He has grown pale. He's grown old in office because of the problems that are on top of his head. But he's not able to resign. He's unable to say no. He ceased to be a man. He's a spineless individual. I, in inspiration of the long since resigned. Excuses are not welcome from him. The only excuse you can give is that I was unable to do it, I've left. If he's not doing this, this is a man that should be thrown into trash. Should be dumped and buried politically and anything that we can ever say in public life. It's a failure. His government has been a disaster. Just 7 years. We don't want to go to 40 years of Paul Biya's rule. Just his last 7 years have been the worst of it. This is under him that will find the so-called green core. Money is stolen day and night publicly. And he says nothing. This is under him. That was the COVID-19 report officially handed to him by his own institutions. The thieves are still sitting there in that government with him. He cannot fire them. I think it's shameful. This man is so shameless. This man is so spineless to hold any public office. If I were in a position to, unfortunately I'm not, you will be in jail. I'm probably in jail for life. Over to you.
Yeah, for that very expanded answer to that question. We also see this video we talked about of an Ambazonian that has gone global with his literary work. We're going to take a quick look at this video and then we'll have you react to the comments he made and what you think, how you think those comments can actually impact the Ambazonian struggle. Let's take a quick look at this video of Adiang.
Wow. God is good. Please say
God is good.
all the time. God is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of the war, but the war continues. Sometimes it's in our personal lives. We fight a battle inside our mind, our situations. But today, there is a war still going on in my country where I was born. And it's called the Ambazonia, where you can check it on the phone right now. I want you all to take a moment of silence because we have more than 6 million people already there in Cameroon today. I wrote my book not because I wanted to be a writer. I'm an actor, I'm a filmmaker. Because after I was sick in the war in the world, they sent me to Brazil, where I decided to become a filmmaker and actor. I worked with HBO in America for like 13 years before coming to the US. I graduated from the New York Film Academy as a journalist, and today I am an example in my community in Cameroon. A lot of people are writing in to ask me, tell me, what is going on? How can you help us? So I wrote the book to inspire. Each copy of the book, you buy it, the money is going to the children and the mothers of the Ambazonia region in Cameroon. That's the English part of Cameroon. So I'm begging you all. That's what all the time. Where's Lynn? Where's Lynn? Lynn, you are just like a mother to so many of us. You gave us voice when we had no voice. Thank you so much. This year tonight, Santa Maria. You don't know. I want to thank you all and keep praying for Ambazonia.
So you get a glimpse of what we mean when we say he dedicated this book to Ambazonia. Not only did he dedicate his book to Ambazonia, but he used the opportunity to talk clearly about the Ambazonian war. He did not say Cameroon crisis. He stated it, Ambazonian war. And this is an Ambazonian from Mbeseha doing this on global stage, not just talking about it, but urging the people right there and then to check on their phones about the Ambazonian war. I feel this is more than the publicity Ambazonians could have paid for, but he did that of his own volition. What do you think about this? How far do you think this can go to impact the Ambazonian struggle, Barrister Mbeseha?
I think there are so many things that we ignore or sometimes neglect, such as what has just gone on with that young man. We were talking about Ekok a few minutes ago. We have talked about Ngaribu. We have talked about all the disaster that has occurred to us, to ourselves. Those were painful events. Those were war events when people were shut down. But when a struggle transitions from gunshots to the intellectual field, where authors write books, whose books are dedicated to award-winning authors, an award is the best of the category for the time. That means the struggle or that issue has taken international front stage. The book should be read. People don't know him. But just seeing that word, award-winning, people will buy those books. And they will read. Remember, people who have read, the people who never knew like Socrates in ancient history. But we hear their name, we will look for the books to read it. So this struggle has transitioned from the battlefield of guns to the intellectual domain of writing, which intellectual remain. Paul Biya, with all his cohorts, all our enemies combined, cannot quench the fire of intellectual reading. They can catch you and me and lock me up or lock me up for carrying a gun, for saying what we are saying. They will not catch all the readers of those books. They will not go and filter the world and tell them not to read that book. You see that audience where the guy was launching the book, where he was receiving the prize. In that audience, I'm not sure he could count off to 10 black people, talk less of even 5 Ambazonians or even Cameroonians. But the hall was full of people from around the world. So that is a milestone. I don't know whether there's anything we can say in terms of length in English more than a milestone, because a mile looks like the longest stretch. That is a milestone in this struggle. It tells the world, it tells us, it tells our opponents that this struggle is no longer what we thought. He can kill us in Garbo. He can lock up Sissiko. He can come and silence me here. He can do what he like. You will not silence that new development. You will not silence that new front, the front of intellectual fight. And so we must say congratulations to the young man. We must say he's done a good job. It's a personal reflection. He sat down. He's not co-author of the book with somebody. He wrote it alone. And for him to have transitioned right to that level, from wherever he came, to produce a book, which is an award-winning author alone on a particular cause, we can only say congratulations. We can only say that Ambazonia has minds, who have the intellect, who have what it takes to not just be part of the world, but to lead in the world, even intellectually. Congratulations, young man. We appreciate you. We are proud of you being one of us. And most particularly, we thank you for dedicating this year book to this cause. Over to you.
Well said, Barrister Mbeseha. I couldn't even agree any less. Those were the exact thoughts of every patriotic Ambazonian. And it is at this juncture we will thank you for joining in, Barrister Mbeseha. As always, it has been insightful. It has been a pleasure having you on Undaunted yet again. But at this juncture, we'll head on to the final reports on the home front. And we're talking about the voice of Ambazonia. Yesterday, we talked about the shocking declarations of Issa Chiroma Bakari, but today, Paul Tassong reacting to those declarations of Issa Chiroma, and the Secretary of State for Communications and IT sheds more insight on La Republique's fractured intelligence network with this editorial he titled Paul Tassong's Outburst and the Implosion of Yaoundé's intelligence network. Let's take a quick listen.
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis. Today is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. Today's editorial is titled Professor Victor Julius Ngo, the historian who helped build the line, now criticizing its ruins. Fellow Ambazonians, for decades, Professor Victor Julius Ngo stood at the center of Yaoundé's historical deception. He was the regime's preferred historian, the man who twisted, downplayed, and buried the true legal history of the British Southern Cameroons to please his Bulu Beti brothers. His lectures and books gave intellectual cover to a political fraud that sought to erase Southern Cameroon's identity and legal status. The term 11th province emerged informally after the abolition of the Federation in 1972. It was not used to describe the Southern Cameroon's territory itself, but rather a specific group of individuals, mostly of French Cameroon ancestry, born or raised in Southern Cameroons, who benefited from its schools, civil service, and institutions, but remained deeply loyal to the French system. Over time, these individuals became known as 11th Province people. They were not loyal to the Southern Cameroon's project of self-government and independence. Indeed, they became some of the most aggressive defenders of the centralized Francophone system, often more zealous than their counterparts from East Cameroon. Professor Victor Ngo is himself an 11th province figure. He represents that category of people who were shaped by Southern Cameroons but chose to identify with, serve, and defend the French Cameroon system. Rather than standing for the truth of the territory that raised him, he used his academic platform to defend Yaoundé's version of history, a version that erased Southern Cameroons as a distinct political and legal entity. But today, the irony is clear. The same Professor Ngo, who once defended the system, has begun publicly criticizing the very structure he supported for decades. In a recent appearance, she expressed frustration at the state of the country, pointing to 9 years of lockdown in Ambazonia, endless commissions whose recommendations were ignored, and a regime that has failed to deliver even basic services. He lamented that after decades of promises, there are still no good roads, no potable water systems, and no farm-to-market roads to support local communities. For someone who once celebrated the so-called reunification as a national success, these words sound like a bitter confession. These are not the words of an Ambazonian patriot. They are the words of a man who helped provide the historical and cultural tools the regime used to undermine Ambazonia's nationhood. The same Professor Ngo, who denied the legal independence of southern Cameroon, is now lamenting the collapse of the house he helped build. History is clear. It was his distortion of the 1st October 1960 Southern Cameroon's order in council that helped bury Ambazonians' legal identity. It was his false presentation of the 1961 plebiscite as reunification that gave the regime cover for illegal annexation. It was his glorification of the Fumban Conference that created the illusion of a lawful union where none existed. And it was his embrace of the 11th province mentality that allowed a foreign system to take root inside southern Cameroon. Today, even Professor Ngo indirectly admits that the system has failed. He points to decades of unfulfilled promises, neglected infrastructure, and a country paralyzed by contradictions. But he refuses to confront his own role in building the historical lies that brought us here. The truth is simple. The Yaoundé system is failing because it was built on historical fraud and internal betrayal. A house built on lies will always crack. Professor Ngo helped build that house, and now even he is complaining about the leaking roof. Fellow Ambazonians, we are not fooled. We remember who rewrote our history. We remember those who stood for truth and those who stood with the occupier. We remember their textbooks. We remember the silence. And now, as the regime collapses, the historian who embodied the 11th province mentality stands in the ruins of his own narrative. Total independence for Ambazonia is not only just, it is inevitable. This has been the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis.
You're welcome back. In Africa, residents of several states across Sudan are reeling after devastating floods surged through homes, farmlands, and entire communities in the middle of the night. The flooding, triggered by days of relentless heavy rainfall, struck without warning, catching many families off guard while they slept. In the hard-hit River Nile state, survivors recount scenes of panic and helplessness as water rapidly engulfed homes and streets, leaving people scrambling for safety in the darkness. Residents said they were surprised by the floodwaters. They were asleep, and at around 1:30 in the morning, the floods arrived, woke up, and couldn't find a way to combat the massive amount of water. The amount is massive, and they couldn't battle it late at night, but they are currently working to drain it. The situation is truly terrible. Everyone is suffering at the moment, said a resident named Ali, recounting what happened. Now, we see that local initiatives to respond to the crises have been severely hampered by a lack of proper equipment and limited resources. In many affected areas, residents have had to rely on rudimentary tools and manual labor to try and drain water from their homes and streets. With roads submerged and infrastructure damaged, movement is difficult, and in some areas virtually impossible. The heavy rains have also made it nearly impossible for aid organizations and government agencies to reach isolated communities in low-lying regions. Authorities in several states, including Blue Nile, Al Jazeera, and the capital, Khartoum, have reported widespread damage. Homes have been destroyed, livestock lost, and crops ruined, threatening food security in rural communities already grappling with economic hardship. Humanitarian group warned that if the rain continues, there could be a further rise in waterborne diseases, especially elderly, amongst the children and the elderly. Well, in River Nile State, there is mounting frustration among residents who believe the disaster could have been mitigated with better planning and investment in flood protection infrastructure. But then many argue that the region has experienced seasonal flooding in the past, yet little has been done to reinforce embankments, clear drainage systems, or establish early warning signs. This didn't have to happen the way it did, said one local elder. We've been warning for years, but no one listens until it is too late. As rains continue to pour and pound parts of the country, the immediate focus remains on rescue and recovery. But for many residents, the flood has not only damaged property, it has eroded trust in those tasked with protecting communities from such disasters. With the rainy season far from over, vulnerable populations across Sudan are bracing for further hardship, clinging to hope that help will arrive before the waters rises again. With that, we head on into the news across the rest of the globe. On the foreign scene, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met with the United States President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday, with discussions expected to center on tariffs and the future of Canada-US trade relations. The visit marks Carney's second to the Oval Office since May and comes amid heightened tensions over tariffs on autos, steel, aluminium, and softwood lumber. The meeting also coincides with a week-long U.S. government shutdown and growing concerns about potential economic fallout from strained trade relations. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who has urged Ottawa to roll back federal environmental laws, said she hoped Carney's trip will strengthen ties with Washington. She noted that while a breakthrough was unlikely, finding common ground on tariffs was essential to protecting Canadian industries and jobs. Political analysts have warned that the visit carries diplomatic risk. Jonathan Cals, a former advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, said Canada currently enjoys relatively low tariff rates and cautioned against actions that could provoke a tougher U.S. stance. Observers say Carney's ability to balance domestic expectations with the demands of a protectionist U.S. administration will determine whether the talks yield progress or deepen trade uncertainty between the two allies. And on to the Pope Leo's visit. We see Pope Leo XIV will embark on his first international journey later this year, visiting Turkey and Lebanon in a mission centered on peace, interfaith dialogue, and support for Christians in the Middle East. The historic trip, scheduled from November 27 to December 2nd, will see the first American Pope spend 4 days in Turkey before continuing to Lebanon. The Vatican said the visit underscores the pontiff's commitment to promoting regional stability and strengthening ties between faith communities. In Turkey, Pope Leo will commemorate the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, a landmark gathering that defined core Christian doctrine. He is expected to visit Iznik, ancient Nicaea, and hold discussions with Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, the spiritual head of more than 300 million Eastern Orthodox Christians, in a bid to deepen Catholic Orthodox relations. The Vatican confirmed that invitations for the visit came from both civil and church leaders in Turkey and Lebanon. The Pope's upcoming trip also fulfills plans initially set by his predecessor, Pope Francis, who had intended to visit both countries before health issues curtailed his travel. In Lebanon, Pope Leo is expected to meet President Joseph Aoun and senior religious figures to discuss the country's political and humanitarian challenges. The Vatican said his message will center on peace, coexistence, and hope for Christian minorities across the region. With that, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted, but before we go, let's take a look at our major headlines. On Undaunted tonight, we brought to you the Ambazonian State Army launching deadly attack on La Republic forces in Ekok, located in Manu County on October 6, 2025. We also saw solidarity in ink when the Ambazonian struggle moves to the intellectual front. Adiang Assuoe dedicated our award-winning book to Ambazonia. Dion and Ngute's remarks exposing deep-seated hypocrisy in Yaoundé's political establishment was also another report we brought. And the voice of Ambazonia by the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Dr. Martin Mungwa, Paul Tassong's Outburst, and the implosion of Yaoundé's intelligence network was the topic on that Voice of Ambazonia today. And on the news across Africa, we saw sudden floods devastating homes and farmland across Sudan, as well as the global scene Carney meeting with Trump in Washington as trade and tariff tensions take center stage. We also saw Pope Leo XIV visiting Turkey and Lebanon on first international mission focused on peace and interfaith unity. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted, we say thank you for tuning in. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.